Hi there. So today we're going to answer some of the most frequent questions I get on Instagram. If you want to ask a question, just jump onto my Instagram where I have a Q&A every Monday. Okay, so the first question we have is, what is your main reason for being vegan? So for me, there's a couple of reasons why I started. It was mainly around health and performance, but I was also aware of what goes on, especially around factory farming. But as that has evolved over the last couple of years, it's become more about animal welfare as I've started to learn more about what exactly happens in factory farming, the dairy industry, etc. Okay, so next up we have quite an interesting one. Do you ever drink alcohol? So I get this quite a lot. Just kind of talking to people about it or asking questions about that. I don't personally, and I haven't for some time. Which can be quite a shock for people as I'm from Ireland, but I actually stopped roughly the same time I went vegan, kind of a couple of months after that, where I just stopped drinking alcohol completely. Before that, I wouldn't have drank it excessively, but maybe once or twice a year I would have, and I just kind of stopped completely then. So there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one was health. I just don't see any benefits and lots of negatives to actually drinking alcohol, so I just stopped. That was probably number one reason. Secondly was dealing with hangovers or being sluggish the next day. I just don't want that. I want to obviously live each day to its fullest, and I find when you drink alcohol makes that a bit of an. When you're drinking, especially a lot, the next day is going to be a write-off for most people, and for some people that can go into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay, so next up we have, does the cooking process change the protein content of the food? So no, it doesn't. You still have the same amount of protein, but when you've cooked something, you've either added water or you've took it away. So, for example, if we have 100 grams of chickpeas, which has approximately 20 grams of protein, when we cook those chickpeas, because they're dried, we're just adding water in then when we're cooking them. So that means at the end of it, we'll have around 200 grams of chickpeas, but the protein content will still be the same, around 20 grams. It just means that we've now got 100 ml of water in there as well. Okay, so next up we've got, what is the highest protein for calories that you found? So the number one for this, it tends to be seitan, which is made from wheat protein. That is 80-90% protein when you have the powder. Obviously then you mix it with water, spices like soy sauce, stuff like that. But overall it's going to be really, really high in protein per calorie. So that's my number one. Number two is probably going to be textured vegetable protein, where there is going to be a little bit of extra carbs there compared to seitan, but overall it's still quite a lean vegan protein source. Okay, so next we have, how can vegans bulk? So bulking, gaining muscle, gaining size, something that comes up quite a lot as well. There's no difference fundamentally compared to a non-vegan bulking. The principles are the same. Number one is training. You've got to be following a training program that prioritizes progressive overload, which means you're just getting stronger over time. That's number one. Without that, you can eat as much protein as you like, you can take as many supplements as you like, nothing's going to happen. So that's number one, make sure you're following a good training program. Secondly, then we want to make sure we're consuming enough calories and enough protein to actually fuel that muscle growth. So that's kind of the second key point that we want to look at. Often we're going to be in a bit of a surplus when we're trying to bulk, when we're trying to gain size. Beyond that, then we've got to make sure our recovery, our sleep, all of that is taken care of. There's no point in going partying all weekend and then trying to fit your gym sessions in around that and then wondering why you're not gaining the muscle or size that you expected. So there's some of the fundamentals there. If you want to learn more, I do have a vegan bulking guide that I will link in the description that you can check out to learn some more on bulking as a vegan. Okay, so the next question we have is, how do I make sure I'm getting enough nutrition? Okay, so with this, number one, you want to make sure you're eating enough food during the day. That's the simplest way to get started. If you have to use like a calorie calculator, or what I use is a chronometer, just so you've got a base calorie target to aim for. Then secondly, you want to make sure you're eating a wide variety of foods each day. Fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, legumes, etc. So that's two ways to get started that are quite easy. And the third way is that you're just supplementing where you need to be. So if you're on a vegan diet, obviously B12 is a good place to start there. And that's kind of it, that's the basics. If you're there, you're probably going to cover almost, if not all, your needs. Okay, so next up we have one about Bulgaria. So for anyone who doesn't know, I actually live in Bulgaria. even though I'm originally from Ireland. So is veganism popular in Bulgaria? Overall, I would say no, it's not very popular, although it is growing at quite a rapid pace. Here in Sofia, the capital, there is quite a lot of vegan options in supermarkets, health food stores, and there's quite a number of restaurants that are maybe not fully vegan but vegetarian with quite a lot of vegan options. When you go outside of the capital here, yeah, it's a bit more sparse, not as many options, but overall it's definitely growing, and places are starting to incorporate, like restaurants having at least one pretty good vegan option. So it's small but growing. Okay, so next up we've got tips on super simple vegan meals for beginner vegans. So this is probably the meal that I eat the most. I think it's the easiest way that we can kind of break down a meal is, number one, just start with a carb source. That can be like rice, quinoa, sweet potato, something like that. Second, then I look at a protein source. Again, that can be any number of things like tofu, tempeh, seitan, TVP, even beans and lentils. Then I look at veggies. Okay, how can I get 2 or 3 different veggies on my plate? And I can either, roast them, boil them, whatever you want to do. And then lastly, I'm just looking for a fat source. For me, that tends to be something like a peanut butter or a cashew butter sauce. And then I'm just putting that together. So for example, I've got my rice, I've got my tempeh, I've got some roasted veggies, and then I make a really quick peanut butter sauce with, peanut butter, soy sauce, maybe some chili sauce, whatever spices I want to use, and that's it. So that's how I tend to look at like a really simple meal that anybody can put together. And there's any number of combinations you can do from this. Okay, so the next question we have is, what is TVP? TVP stands for textured vegetable protein, and essentially you probably come across this before with stuff like soy chunks or soy mince. It's essentially a plant protein is heated and pushed through an extruder to make a different shape. So from this, if you want to prepare it, you just got to rehydrate that with some hot water and whatever spices and flavorings you want to use, and that's it. So essentially it's quite high in protein, and it kind of mimics that kind of meat shape and texture. If you want to learn more, check out my vegan muscle guide, which contains everything you need to know about vegan nutrition for bulking, including calorie targets, protein targets, and we've also got sample meal plans there to help you get started.